Okay, well, welcome back to part 3 of the Nakshatras course. Back here again with Michael Reed, and we're going to begin today with the Nakshatra Mrigashirsha. So, Michael, I'll turn it over to you. What do you have to share with us today?
Thanks, Ryan. Well, we're going to, like you said, we're first going to talk about Mrigashirsha. And something that I want to really touch on before we get into Mrigashirsha is the first 9 nakshatras really represent the concept that I like to call cosmic ideation, which is the divine impulse coming into being, or the cosmic idea coming into creative form. And the first 9 really represent that. And it's with Mrigashirsha that basically the individual, or what is coming into being, becomes aware of its own existence. And we're going to go over some of the things that are associated with Mrigashirsha, and as usual, when it's appropriate, we'll share a story, because I find that mythology is one of the best ways to understand the nakshatras. So the deity that's connected to Mrigashirsha is Soma. Soma is a form of the moon god. And what Soma is, or the aspect of the moon that's related to Soma, is the concept of sensitivity and enlightenment. The moon, as we both know, being related to consciousness, right? Mm-hmm. So Soma gives fulfillment. In all the mythological stories, the gods are looking for Soma, the nectar of immortality, right? So Soma is that which gives the consciousness sensitivity, so it can become aware, and through that awareness attain enlightenment, right? Mm-hmm. The Shakti that's connected with Mrigashirsha is the power of giving fulfillment. Mm-hmm. Now, there's an interesting concept that arises through Mrigashirsha, but we're going to touch on this after we go over the next few points, which is the basis above, the basis below, and the result that we've been covering with each of the nakshatras. So the basis above in the heavens with Mrigashirsha is that of extension. The heavens extend themselves to the individual consciousnesses that are here on Earth. The basis below that happens is that of weaving, coming together, interacting, joining together, separating and joining back together again. And the result of this is to make the world enjoyable. Now, generally, with Mrigashirsha and the processes that are connected with Mrigashirsha, there generally tends to be a separation or a dissatisfaction with a particular set of events that leads to a dissecting of the parts that are associated with that, depending upon what's going on. Let's say something is happening in connection with a relationship to Mrigashirsha. Well, the 2 individuals might need to kind of take some space, then come back together and talk about how things are going and how they can plan on moving forward from that particular space. As we've touched on with each of the nakshatras, there are the 3 gunas that are associated with the nakshatras. And Mrigashirsha has Rajasic energy at its basis, right? It's very passionate at its basis. And it builds upon that Rajasic energy with Tamasic energy at the secondary level and caps it off with Tamasic energy. So the concept here is of creating new form. The primary motivation of Mrigashirsha is moksha, or liberation, right? So the dissatisfaction with a particular set of events and wanting to liberate oneself from that particular set of events. Mm-hmm. The ruling planet is Mars. Now, with all the Mars-related nakshatras, there always tends to be a level of dissatisfaction that leads to a willful change. And as we see when we go over the story that's connected with Mrigashirsha, that's particularly the case. The Trimurti association, or Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, with Mrigashirsha is Vishnu. It's about preserving, right? Mm-hmm. So Mrigashirsha is itself about seeking fulfillment with something, looking for a better way. right? So there's a particular story which is really wonderful in exhibiting what goes on with the processes of Mrigashirsha, and it's a story of Soma, or the moon, and Brihaspati, which is the priest of the gods, but is also a name of Jupiter.
Mm-hmm.
And this is about the beginning of new life and the refreshment that results from beginning something new. So Soma, the moon, actually fell in love with Tara, which is the wife of Jupiter. Now, before we proceed further with this story, the fact that Jupiter's wife is named Tara has a lot of very deep symbolic meaning in it, right? Because Tara is another word for star. And it's also connected with the nakshatras, Jupiter being about expansion and the growth of consciousness, right? So the wife of Jupiter is Tara, or the nakshatras in general. Now, I know that can confuse some people, because also the nakshatras are referred to as the wives of the moon. But for the sake of this particular story, and you'll see where it goes, because the nakshatras, or Tara, actually does connect with the moon. But for the sake of this story, it's the wisdom that comes through the nakshatras and the symbolism that's there. So basically, Soma fell in love with Tara, and he convinced Brihaspati, or Jupiter, to start his rituals that he did daily a little bit early, right? And so Jupiter left under that concept, and Soma kind of snuck in and eloped with Jupiter's wife and seduced her, right? Mm-hmm. So Jupiter returned home, or Brihaspati returned home after his rituals, to find Tara was gone. And so he went out to find her and found that that she was with Soma, the moon god, and demanded her return. Soma, though, refused to give her back, and Tara also didn't want to come back either. So the gods intervened, and the moon was actually persuaded to return Tara to her rightful husband. Tara, however, was pregnant from her relationship with the moon, and there's symbolic meaning there too, the consciousness being related to the moon, Tara being related to the nakshatras. And so Tara would not disclose the identity of the father, but it was found out eventually. And there was the prodigy that came from the union of the moon and Tara was Mercury, also known as Buddha in Vedic astrology. And Mercury was so charming that Jupiter agreed to father the child, right? So here we have the process of a separation, and then a coming back together with a new life. But there's also a lot of very deep symbolism that's there too, which is the consciousness marrying the nakshatras, right? After the concept of wisdom, and as we begin to see with the evolution of the next nakshatras, with the concept of wisdom being gained from the union of the moon and the nakshatras, and that translating into Mercury, or right discrimination, or the ability to make proper judgment, right? But initially the nakshatras being connected to Jupiter, or the divine wisdom, divine impulse, and then you have the consciousness connecting to that too. And so there's a whole process that's there that is really giving the concept of how this nakshatra begins to function. So again, this is becoming aware of oneself, aware of one's embodiment, or the beginning of one's embodiment in creation, but also aware of one's psyche, and aware of one's soul, and aware of all those higher aspects of oneself. And we'll see as these nakshatras begin to evolve, how this all begins to play itself out, and begins to grow from there.
Yeah. Well, what's kind of fascinating about that, when you think about the story that you just told, and Mercury being born, from this combination of Jupiter and Tara. Well, since this is since this is a nakshatra dealing with the power of giving fulfillment, well, it would make sense that Mercury would play a strong role in this, I think, because you need a good Mercury to figure out how to explore something, or how to figure out the details of certain things. And when it comes to Mercury, one of the things I've always noticed is that it typically gives a capacity to see both sides of an issue. And so when I think about the basis above or basis below, this idea of extension, extending your vision, extending your capacity to see multiple points of view, and then the basis below weaving, and Mercury being a primary planet of dexterity, the use of one's hands, these sorts of things. And then again, the result, making the world enjoyable. Well, if you're able to manage things within your life well, or manage certain circumstances well, more than likely you're going to enjoy it. So I just find it fascinating that the story behind part of the Nakshatra, giving birth to Mercury, seems to play into the Shakti, the basis and the result, and these sorts of things. Is that something you've ever thought about? I'm curious, because that actually came to me.
Exactly. And there's so much symbolism within that one story that I sometimes have a hard time putting it into words. But if we think about the concept of the moon and how the moon waxes and wanes too, right? Then we have the concept of, we can decide to pursue more sensory-oriented enjoyments, right? Mm-hmm. Which can stand the potential to decay over time.
Right.
Or we can seek that higher wisdom, as being given through Jupiter. And we can find that which doesn't decay.
Right.
And Mercury kind of being the intermediary between the moon and Jupiter on that level. And it gives that discrimination of when is the right time to pursue those things and what the meaning of the sensory-oriented things that we pursue actually are.
Right. Yeah. And that's the idea of Mrigashirsha, and the individual becoming aware of one's existence. I mean, I know you've been speaking about this, but Mercury dealing with the senses, and it seems to me that oftentimes one of the ways that the self figures out what it is by, first of all, getting involved in the senses, the world of form, until it eventually looks back or turns back to Jupiter, the father of Mercury, to see the bigger picture of it all. So it seems to also have a correlation to the whole cycle of inner realization in a way.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I found with Mrigashirsha in general, the planet that is interacting through that, or that is having its consciousness develop through that, tends to feel very dissatisfied and is always reaching for something better. And there again, we have that concept of extension,
right.
And weaving a web,
right.
Within the world, looking for something, that's better. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And again, we have that concept of that thing that we're dissatisfied with or seeking greater fulfillment through either has an outcome that grows and moves in a more evolved and positive manner, or it has an outcome that decays,
right.
as per Soma or the moon god.
And so with this particular nakshatra, having a planet in this nakshatra, considering what house that planet rules or what that planet represents in general, could that indicate an area that the person is an area of life where they're doing more of their seeking, more of their searching, more of where they're looking to find fulfillment in this world?
Well, exactly. Let's think of Jupiter, for instance. Let's say, for instance, Jupiter was for an Aries ascendant, so to speak, right? And Jupiter was ruling the 9th and the 12th. And Jupiter happened to be in Mrigashirsha.
Right.
The person may find themselves, interacting and connecting with people, purely for the desire of, growing and evolving spiritually.
Right, exactly.
Jupiter and Mrigashirsha, yeah. And they may feel, as per the dissatisfaction side of it, dependent upon particular factors like Mars, because Mars being the ruler of Mrigashirsha, they either may feel like, life is really great because I've got all these really wonderful spiritual people to connect to, or they may feel like, I'm still not really satisfied.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, seems like this would be an important nakshatra to look at, when we're trying to figure out a person's motivation in life and whether there's a cusp there or a planet there. So, all right, that's good. Excellent. Okay, good. Well, any other thoughts on Mrigashirsha before we move on to the next planet?
No, I think that's good.
Okay.
I think that's good, unless you had some other thoughts too.
No, I think we covered it pretty well there. Excellent. Well, let's move on to Ardra then.